Hi, everyone. Ken Briggs here with another quick take. Today, I'm going to be talking about the supply chain disruptions from the closing of the Strait of Hormuz and how this is affecting shipping and could end up affecting prices and your budget. So, the Strait of Hormuz has been effectively closed for almost 2 months. One of the largest disruptions ever. Oil hit a peak of $115 a barrel. And yet you went to the grocery store this week, the shelves were stocked. Your Amazon package still arrived. Gas prices are painful, but it's not 1973. So what's going on? The answer is actually fascinating and also a bit of a ticking clock. Let's start with the map. The Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile choke point between Iran and Oman. Before the war, roughly 20 million barrels of oil passed through it every day, about a fifth of the world's seaborne supply. Natural gas, crude oil, fertilizers, chemicals, most of it heading towards Asia. When Iran closed it, shippers had three options. One, go anyway and risk getting hit. There were 21 confirmed attacks on merchant vessels since the start of the conflict. Two, find a back route. Iran has actually been quietly using a pipeline that bypasses the strait entirely, exporting to a terminal east of Hormuz. That's interesting, but limited volume going through there. Three, and this is what most carriers chose, was to go the long way around. That means the Cape of Good Hope, all the way around the southern tip of Africa. This is the route that dominated global trade before the Suez Canal connected the Red Sea to the Mediterranean. But here's how big that detour actually is. You're adding 3,500 nautical miles in anywhere from 10 to 14 extra days at sea one way. Fuel consumption goes up 40%. Insurance premiums have spiked, and war risk coverage for anything in the Gulf zone was essentially canceled by March. The world's biggest container line suspended Hormuz transits within days. But here's the thing about rerouting that most people don't think about. The same number of ships now cover the same amount of cargo, but each voyage takes longer. So the effective capacity of the entire global shipping fleet drops. Ships that used to make 6 round trips a year are now making 5. That's not a small number, and it creates a slow squeeze. Oh, and the Red Sea is also complicated. So the Houthis, Iran's proxy in Yemen, resumed attacks on commercial shipping. So the route through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait up through the Suez Canal into the Mediterranean, carriers had actually come back to it by January thinking things had stabilized. Then the war started and they all turned around again. So the Cape isn't just a Hormuz workaround, it's also the Suez workaround. The Panama Canal, by the way, is seeing record traffic for exactly this reason. Asian buyers who used to source energy from the Persian Gulf are now scrambling for U.S. alternatives instead, and the Panama Canal is the established route for getting U.S. oil and gas to Asia. The difference now is the volume. Auction prices for transit slots have gone up tenfold since the war started, and one tanker even paid $4 million just to jump the queue. Back to the original question. Why haven't we really felt this yet? Well, there's 3 reasons. So the first is stockpiles. When tensions were clearly building in early February, Iran tripled its oil exports, essentially front-running the closure. Saudi Arabia did the same. The IEA coordinated a release of 400 million barrels from emergency reserves in mid-March. China, meanwhile, was sitting on an estimated 1.4 billion barrels in strategic reserves, nearly 3.5 times the U.S. reserve. That's a lot of buffer. The second reason is the pipeline, not an oil pipeline, a supply chain pipeline. Think about the goods that were already in transit when the war started, sitting in containers on ships that left Gulf ports in January and February. Those arrived. The pipeline was full. What's in the pipeline now is a different story. Persian Gulf petrochemicals, fertilizers, plastics, all the stuff downstream of oil is either not moving or moving at a fraction of normal volume and at much higher cost. That cost works its way through manufacturers, importers, and distributors before it hits a shelf. That process takes 90 to 180 days. That same window, it provides a useful comparison to the COVID supply chain crisis. Container rates spiked in mid-2021. but the effects on retail prices didn't peak until late 2021 into early 2022, a lag of 6 to 12 months that famously dragged down the Biden presidency. This disruption started in late February. You can do the math. The third reason is that oil is barely still moving. A trickle of vetted ships from China, Russia, India, and Pakistan have continued to transit under special arrangements with Iran. This is in addition to the 80% of the oil market that is still out there. This is nowhere near normal, but it's not zero, and oil is traded on global markets. But here's the part that should concern people. The ceasefire, such as it is, has been extended, but a classified Pentagon briefing told lawmakers it could take 6 months to clear mines from the strait, even after a real deal is reached. 6 months of the Cape route as the default and of elevated shipping costs baking into the price of every import. IMF is already projecting higher inflation and slower growth globally. Some projections have Brent crude peaking at $115 a barrel this quarter and dropping down to 88 by year end, but only if the conflict does not persist. Even in this optimistic scenario, gas prices probably won't return to pre-war levels until 2027. Iran has also been threatening to extend disruptions to the Red Sea, which would close both Hormuz and Suez simultaneously. And at that point, the Cape of Good Hope isn't a detour, it's the only route, and the shipping math gets ugly fast. So the world has been here before, sort of, during COVID, and after the Houthi attacks starting in late 2023, carriers had already learned to live with shipping routes rerouted around Africa. Supply chains are genuinely more resilient than people often give them credit for. But resilient doesn't mean immune, it means delayed. The buffer absorbs the shock, and then the prices move. The shelves are full today because ships left before the war started. The question is what's in the pipeline right now, making its way around Africa, and what it's going to cost when it arrives.